Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we return on the back of Spurs squeezing their way into round 4 of the FA Cup. And it felt like at one point it was an absolute squeeze. If you went for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms, we're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on Blue Sky too. And I return with yet another top-tier panel on Last Word on Spurs that are going to guide you through, see you through all things Spurs in the FA Cup. Where was it the magic of the Cup? We'll let the boys decide that one and more. I'm joined by... Cracker's just nodding away there. I'm joined by, one of our own, Compere events host. No one does it better. Richard Crackers Cracknell is back on your screen. Good news is he hasn't pulled a hamstring with what is to come in his January diary. I feel like Mrs. C is not going to be too much after we get January out of the way. Will I get him back for February at this rate? I don't know. Joining Crackers, broadcast extraordinaire, Russ Williams returns to the panel. And look, always great to have this man on. He's been making my panels for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. And unlike Tottenham, he looks fresher and fresher every time we see him. It's Miles over at the Spurs Kings. You bet. See what I did there? You bet. Miles will get that one. He will. Look, Tottenham Hotspur edging their way past Tamworth against in a difficult game in the end, which really it shouldn't have been. We'll give you the match facts and stats before we get into the game itself. It ended in the end, Tamworth 0, Tottenham Hotspur 3. There were many different, feelings, let's be honest about it, at the initial 90-minute point when we went into extra time. But it ended with 13 shots to Tamworth to Spurs' 17. Spurs edging it on shots 7-2 on target, that is. 65 touches in the Tamworth box to Tottenham's 18. 5 big chances for Spurs on the game itself. The goalkeeper seeing the busier of the 2 goalkeepers on the day itself, 4-2. Tottenham racking up the pass in there, 803 to 238. 6 corners to Tottenham's 11. Spurs dominating the possession stats, 77% to 23%. And Tottenham also killing the XG. Jason, I'm going to be glad to go. Yes, Jason, killing the XG, 1.37 to 0.55. Right. Now it is time to get down to the serious business. Let's bring Richard Crackers Cracknell to start this game. I got to say beforehand, many call it the magic of the cup. We had to get the part-time guy, bless him, who actually worked in Zara to retake the goal for us beforehand. I mean, Cracks, I know you love games like these. Maybe not days like this in terms of the result and the performance, but the summary overall of Spurs being in the FA Cup away to, let's be honest about it, a minnow side. I've got to say, that was an absolutely heroic display from Tamworth. We'll come into the game itself, Cracks, but what did you make of the overall build-up to it? The fact there were obviously the way the fans were coming into the stadium, the way the players and the managers came into the stadium, and you started the game with someone having to sellotape the goal back together, Cracks. What did you make of it for you?
Rick, you cannot not love the magic of the FA Cup. You cannot. Look, Spurs last won this in 91. So you've got people now, presume you have to be maybe 10, 11 years old to appreciate winning an FA Cup and what sort of football is. So you would have had to have been born in around 1980. So we're now on 2025. So anybody really under 45 years old is not knowing what it's like to win an FA Cup. Really not knowing what it is like. So if you're a young grandparent, there is grandparents of Tottenham fans that don't know what it's like to win an FA Cup. That's how long ago it is. It's a magic thing to do. It's been diluted in the last few years, ever since Man U pulled out from it to go off to the Abu Dhabi Kings Cup, something or the other that they did. It seems to have diluted since then. But for those old heads like us that saw 81 and saw 82, it's still a magic thing. It still really is a magic thing. And on the way to winning the cup, you get these games, whether it's us and a Tamworth or it's somebody else and, a lower league team. This is what makes the FA Cup magic. Seeing that today was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. Absolutely loved seeing it. It was almost like it was staged. To see the nets being taped up was just fantastic. Look, Tottenham, make no bones about it. Tottenham stunk today. They absolutely stunk. They were woeful. There's players there that really need to look at themselves. The property developer that sometimes runs a football club, he was there today as well. And he would have seen that there is some players there that are just not up to the job. Looking at you, Timo Werner. So hopefully he's seen this today and we'll get something. Is that him in his Zara?
Just a Zara outfit. Good old Timo, bless his heart.
The trouble is, if Timo was serving you in Zara instead of the Tamworth player, when you got to the till with your jumper, he'd just keep missing the bag, wouldn't he? Just keep falling to the floor. You'd never leave the till, would you? Look. Today for Tamworth was absolutely incredible for them. Rick, I've spent some time around Dorking Wanderers who are at the same level. One of Tamworth's players today, Hayden Hollins, my lad Tom's was training with him, like sort of about. I sent you through the picture, didn't I? There was
unbelievable.
Hayden and Conor Gallagher's brother, Dan Gallagher, like all training together. And today he's playing versus Tottenham. So, look, clubs like Tamworth, clubs like Dorking, when the FA Cup comes round and you get a draw like this, like with Marine as well, it is absolutely, it's incredible. It is everything to them. They've probably up their budget or sorted their budget for the next 5 years with this. So, I mean, okay, it's another football club, but these aren't just football clubs at this level. These are hubs of communities. They put on really good community-based stuff for kids and for older people and training facilities. So for them to get a Tottenham today and bring in real cash bonus where they can go on to go and, and improve facilities and maybe offer some like classes and things going on is brilliant. And that's what makes the FA Cup so special. Today's result, Rick, they happen sometimes. They do happen. As King Oddle's saying in the comments here, it was their World Cup final at their ground on their pitch, which was all over the place. And it unsettled us. It really did unsettle us. That pitch looked even bad for a 4G pitch. So, there's lots of factors that play in to this. It's just incredible. What a still. What a still. Honestly,
can't give him back away. Can't give him away.
Make no bones at all. We stunk, but there is factors going into this because players at that Tamworth level. I said on our little WhatsApp group during the week, if we go in there and we're not on our straps, we are in trouble. Don't think teams like Tamworth, teams like Dorking Wanderers are mugs. They've got some very, very decent young players in there or players that never quite made it, but they're not mugs. They really are not mugs. Yes, we shouldn't have made such hard work of it, but people seem to have a bit of a romantic notion that this might just be like 15 blokes that have fallen out the pub to have a game of football. They're not. They train seriously. They do things like data analysis and use training vests in training, the data vests in training. It's only really the skill level and the speed of thought that makes that difference. So, there's a lot of factors playing into what happened today. But look, we're through. that's all that kind of matters in the cup.
Yep.
You can't really say, "Whoa, that's a bit of a bad important for like upcoming games." It's not. It really isn't. We're through, and and that's that. So there you go. Soapbox away, Rick.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, bringing Russ in there, I think you have to bear that in mind that, we've played a lineup there that are very much kind of a mix of match lineup. And the fact we are playing against a team that, whatever you make about 11, it was, as many as suggested in the comments as well, their World Cup final. But again, we have to put it in balance, Russ, to bring you in, that, these are, with all due respect, part-timers as players that produced an absolutely, in my opinion, heroic display to take Tottenham's extra time before Spurs limped into the FA Cup fourth round with that 3-0 win. And let's have it really straight. Andy Pick's National League side outfit. They pushed Spurs all the way at a buoyant Lamb's ground on an occasion for the whole town to be proud of. And albeit with a tinge of disappointment, they missed out on a potential lucrative replay. There were points in that game, let's have it right as well, that Tamworth had actually threatened to win the game in the second half. They actually came so close towards the end of getting a winner, in the 95, 95th minute. They're unlucky to win it. But look, in the end for Tottenham, Ange watched two of his subs help them progress. It is a second clean sheet for Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham of 2025. It's a second clean sheet in a matter of 4 days for Spurs' new January signing, Kulusevski. And again, look, to put some realism to it, 4 days ago, Tottenham are beating top of the table Premier League Liverpool. And they're taken to extra time by a National League team, 96 places beneath us, 16th in the National League. Can I just say a massive shout out to big up to Bekne Onuru, who really gave us problems during that game and really led the line so well for the hosts. I mean, they defended brilliantly at times, Russ. So, I mean, what are your takeaways from a day where we can now say it's the magic of the cup? I'm not sure we would have said that, and that goal gone in on the 95th minute, it was magic of the cup.
Well, look, for me, the more I learn about Spurs, the less I understand. And I just thought, honestly, any Spurs fan who watched that today and didn't think we were awful, honestly, they need their bumps reading. There are some positives, which I'll come on to, but I don't think we can blame Ange Postecoglou for the inability to cross. The inability, despite playing on a plastic pitch after half an hour, to be able to pass a ball properly, the bad finishing. What I think we can blame him for is, why on earth didn't he start with a centre forward? I mean, ludicrous decision. I mean, I'm not saying Dom Solanke, who came on and, as we know, somehow was involved in the first goal. And he's becoming more and more, I think, a significant player for us. But, when we're up against teams who really want it, teams who are desperate to succeed, who understand the magic of the cup, that Crackers spoke about, I think we are just a bunch of players. A lot of our players don't quite know how to get to that level of passion and desire. And if they are at that level, they don't look as though they are. For me, the only thing that won us that game today is one thing: fitness, nothing else. They were exhausted. So the gaps opened up and we played our football, much easier for us to do so. And goals 2 and 3 came. Brilliant finish by Decky. In any game against any opposition, that would have been. But, there are positives, but we were truly, truly awful. And I think the most frustrating thing for all of us Spurs fans is, you can see the performance against Liverpool, even the game against Newcastle that went against us. We played well. The Liverpool result was great. It's half-time in a semi-final. We've got that lot coming up. We know they've got it in their locker. How do they come up under the spotlight, the glare of television and the fame of the FA Cup with a performance like today? And, the only positives, and I've made a note of them here, is clean sheet, second one on the trot, which is brilliant. We're into round 4, no injuries that you and I spoke about on Friday, Rick. If we get out of this game on a 3G pitch without injuries, it'd be a miracle. it appears that miracle has happened, and the Gooners are out. I mean, that's the positives, and we've got to move forward because the league isn't looking good. And I'll give you another positive. The treble is still on. There you go. But we were dreadful. Dreadful.
It is, treble is still on. And Postecoglou still in all of the cup competitions and could be bringing home a treble to Tottenham. What a season. What a what a crazy season. I mean, Miles, I'll steer the show over to you. Look, the likes of Son, Bergvall, Kulusevski, Solanke, Spurs needed those four to come on and get a win against non-league side Tamworth. So again, I will make this point. They worked ever so hard. Could have won it inside 90. All the 3 goals come in extra time. I think we'll agree after this podcast, we'll never, ever need to go back and revisit this game. But quite interesting, that was a first draw inside 90 minutes in 89 games versus a National League team. We're going to bring on shortly Ange Postecoglou's thoughts on the game, but I wonder what you think, Miles, personally, how he'll internally assess that display for you. What do you think he'll take away from it?
The fact we kept a clean sheet. The goalkeeper, look, I'm going to give positive praise to Dragusin, Gray and Kinski because they were excellent. They knew what they had to do. They basically turned up. They knew what type of game they were in for. Yes, Dragusin was getting a bit, it was kind of a Dragusin game where you kind of go, they're going to try and bully him. They're trying to get him booked, but actually he dealt with it very well. I didn't think Reguilon was that bad either. I thought Porro was poor, considering he was completely poor. I think Basuma comes out of this game going, I don't deserve to be at this level. I am way too good. Maddison, I felt sorry for him. But for me, look, in that first half, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, and a lot of people are going to be, what the hell are you talking about? I actually felt sorry for Werner in that first half because I don't think half the problems were down to him. Yes, he couldn't hold up the ball, don't get me wrong, but the 2 wingers let him down in that first half. And you saw it, and that's why I felt sorry for him up until then he had his chance in the second half where he went 1-on-1 and his header. Because Mikey Moore in the second half kind of took the game. Look, he didn't have a great first half, but he came out in the second half and went, I've actually got to take this game by the scruff of the neck. And he did. But we're still wasting chances. And I believe even if Lancashire would have started, I think we would have still struggled trying to get forward as a front three. And that front three, and as I said it last time, needs to be worked on. It is not great. We need to do something majorly because it's starting to let us down now because we're keeping clean sheets, but them as a free, even when Solanke came on, we didn't look at the end of the day, we could have lost it in the 89th minute, 90th minute, and we had Son on the pitch, we had Kulusevski, I can't remember who came on, but we had Solanke on, so we didn't create nothing when these guys came on. So you're kind of looking at it going, what the hell are we doing? So look, we've got through. There's no positives to take from this at all, apart from the 3 that I said and probably a couple of others. But the rest of them, like when Jed Spence came on, I think he was a complete game changer. And that's saying something because he came on at centre-back. And I thought the fact he tried to make penetrating runs, tried to move forward, that's all that was needed. We didn't, and that was the biggest problem. And as soon as we started to do that, that's why we got the 3 goals. Yes, they were knackered, but there was no one giving that threat. The crosses were so bad today. So bad. And we're meant to be a Premier League side. This has got nothing to do with like how good Tamworth were. The fact we can't cross the ball is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And these are the troubles that we're having in the Premier League. So if we can't do it against Tamworth, I feel sorry for us for the rest of these reviews are just going to get worse and worse as the week go on.
I have to say, just to put it in perspective, Barnet beat Tamworth 7-0 in August.
This issue, but yeah, you can give or take. But I'm just looking at it going, that front 3 is a problem.
Yeah,
and even against Liverpool the other night, they were a problem. But because we've come through it and we've won 1-0, and Bergvall's put it in the net, but there was issues, and we've seriously. I know I said in the summer transfer, or this January transfer window, I was looking at getting a defensive midfielder. But actually, I'm now looking at the bigger problem is we need wingers, capable wingers. Son's up and down. Mikey Moore's too young, and I think a lot of Spurs fans have to realise that today. He is way too young. Please let him develop.
He needs to be better. I totally agree. Totally agree.
He needs to develop because that 15 minutes in the second half, he was great, and it was like, that's what we saw in the Europa League game. But you could tell that he's been out for months, and this probably wasn't the game that we were going to see the best of him. So, but you've got Johnson. Johnson, what I said it last game, he can't dribble, can't do nothing. If he's not scoring, what is he doing for this team?
That's my worry with Johnson.
Yeah,
I take you. That's my worry with Johnson. That his goal impact improved this season, Miles. There's no doubt about that. But I've never ever said on this show ever, and again, I'm just being honest here. Never ever said Johnson's ever run a game or controlled a game or had a real direct influence across the 90s. Is that the concern you talk about the front three there, Miles, in general? I think that squad for me, and I'll let you come back on it. I'll let you come back on it.
Paul Maddison.
Yeah,
and that's where Maddison comes in, and everyone's going to be looking at Maddison. But if that's what he's got to aim at today, and that now includes Werner, what's he supposed to do? He probably had a few chances that we had. However, there are, like I said, if we didn't have our goalkeeper, if we hadn't signed him a week ago, I think we go out today, and I think we lose to Liverpool. It's how they've picked up this goalkeeper all of a sudden out of nowhere. Let's completely be honest. He's come out of nowhere. And he's been solid. He's been good with his feet. He's been everything. Look, today he came out for corners. How many did he catch and just relieve the pressure off the defense? Look, this is why Vicario's back in training now, because he's seen a threat. And I have to be honest, I am looking forward to Kinski on Wednesday. I can't wait to see what he's going to be like in that massive game.
You know what's interesting, Mark? You talk about there, I know many might come away from that game as not seeing many positives. And I think, that's what I would say is one of the direct, I think, important games that we've seen over the course of the last 4 days is somehow Kinski has kept 2 clean sheets in very different circumstances. It kept a clean sheet against the champions, Liverpool. I say the champions or champions to be elect, Liverpool, in a very difficult environment. We hope. We have to say that point. And again, I will make this point. And many might think it's a cop-out me saying this. I do think that the artificial pitch, in my opinion only, might be wrong. I think that played a massive disadvantage to proceedings for us personally. But I still think you've got to go down and win the game. They're a non-league side. I make that point there. 69 places below us in terms of position. You've got to offer more over the case of 90 minutes before you hit extra time. And I will just say, I think his distribution, Kinski, on a 3G surface, I thought was brilliant. I thought his handling was great. I think most notably, again, set pieces, he was in a lot more control. I know we had that one went off the post, but difficult environment to be in. Very, very difficult environment. I would also say Yves Bissouma on the show has taken a lot of stick in the past. I think that was Bissouma, in my opinion, one of his best games that he's had in a Spurs shirt. And it's interesting. With Bissouma, I've been very critical of him that it's very rare that when the team play badly or not as great, Bissouma's one of the shining lights. Weirdly, I think Bissouma, where the team was so inconsistent during that game itself, I think Bissouma really played well across the game itself. And you know what? I do think, again, I know it's against part-timers, but I was really impressed with his display. And he was probably a clear level above from what we were seeing out there. I think, look, difficult day at the office for the likes of Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson will come over into more detail. And I think it screams a massive effect, like you said there, Miles, coming back to you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the likes of Bergvall made a massive difference when he came onto the pitch. The likes, of course, of Jed Spence, who came at centre-half. He played his part in the third goal. So I think whilst, the game itself, there won't be too many takeaways. I go back to what Crack said in his intro. These are one-off, tricky games where, for the respective 11 we're facing, this is their World Cup final. And they're playing against 11 from Tottenham that are a mismatch of a tide. But I do agree with Russ, when you've even got players out there of a level that we've got that have been bought by the amount of money they've been bought by and play at the level they've played at, you need to see more over the course of 120 minutes. You have to. We shouldn't be in a position where we're going to extra time versus Tamworth. We shouldn't be. And again, we know how that impact will hit us. We've got, of course, Arsenal to come on Wednesday. I mean, you could arguably say their season's imploding. They've gone out of, nearly out of 2 cups in the space of 3-4 days. And we've got a really good chance there to actually dent what they're trying to do in the league itself, despite our season looking very indifferent. But I think overall, I think the common consensus will be we're really pleased just to go through. And we've got to hope that, as we've said this season, it does feel like it's cups or bust. Right. So you've heard there, for our listeners on audio, from the 2 managers, just to be very, very clear. We're now going to, listen, before we get into the starting lineup, give you obviously the comprehensive latest update of what that game meant for Spurs. So, of course, progression versus Tamworth meant Tottenham have drawn Aston Villa away in round 4 of the FA Cup, which will be many would say, season-defining week for Tottenham. Now, they're going to face Villa on the week commencing Saturday, the 8th of February. And that game will obviously be confirmed at a later date in terms of time and obviously date. They're going to be facing Liverpool on Thursday, the 6th of February, in the second leg. So from a Tottenham perspective, it will be a very, very interesting week. That will be from, of course, those first couple of weeks of February. We're going to know a lot more about Spurs' season. I will just get the take on the draw itself, because I think initially, Cracks, when that draw came out, Aston Villa away, you would have been thinking, could have been easier. Look, could have been worse as well. But I think we've beaten Villa 4-0 in a row on 2 separate occasions. So, I mean, consecutively actually back-to-back. So,
it could have been, well, it could have been a hell of a lot easier, Rick. I mean, we could have got a National League team away, and we'd have been sat flicking cards into a top hat, wouldn't we? So, it's look. Well, I think with football games and footballers and football clubs, it's almost like when you're playing a Liverpool or a Villa away or a Newcastle at home, or you kind of get the feeling that Ange will come in and the data analysis and the rest of the team, and they'll go, oh, okay, so it's almost like dance moves, right? So Newcastle like to do the cha-cha-cha. Brentford like to do the Charleston. Man U are tango specialists. So you get half an idea of what teams are going to do, who they're going to play, what sort of play patterns they're going to play in, and how you're going to counter them. I think that's why sometimes teams find games like today so difficult, because they just don't really know. They've got no real due diligence on what they are, who they are, how they're going to play. And when you mix up the players that we like we had today as well, they don't really know how to play amongst themselves against a team that they don't know who they're playing. Do you get what I'm saying? So when you come up against a Villa, I think you've got a little bit more intel and a little bit more idea of who's playing. You can have your dossiers on each one. He does this well. He's not so great. Try picking on him down his left side. Show him inside. He's got no right foot. Like today, you've got no idea, absolutely no idea. So in some ways, it's like a little bit easier to do your due diligence, not maybe to play against as such, but you really are going into more known territory. So we've got a pretty decent record at Aston Villa, haven't we? We seem to do okay with them, and I think it will be a good indication of where we are. A lot of it will actually come as well off the back of that Liverpool game, because if we do go there, and if we do go progress into that League Cup final, that Villa game could be a little bit of an after the Lord Mayor show. It really could. If we do get bounced in the League Cup against Liverpool, and be under no illusions, we're only 1-0 up at half time, and the second half's going to be a bit tricky, then if we're out, we could go into that game with a little bit more focus of, well, this is it. This is all or nothing. So a lot of it will depend on that Liverpool game. So I always fancy us more against teams that want to play rather than the teams that don't want to play. So it'd be nice to have them at home, but it's the cup. Let's see what we can go there and do.
You know what, Mark, bring you in. Spurs, they've beaten Villa 4-0 on 6 of their last 10 visits. Does that give you confidence and optimism given that draw? I mean, look, we made that point, as Crackers has said, could have been easier, could have actually been worse, but Villa have been a bit interesting side this season. They've actually struggled to replicate the league form of last season, given their involvement in the Champions League. What do you take away from that draw? Is that a winnable draw for you?
Yeah, look, it is. It's Aston Villa away. We do quite well against Villa at the moment. We've actually been quite decent against them. The only thing that will kind of, and I don't know if I should be saying this, however, if Aston Villa don't qualify in that first part of that phase and they have to go through a playoff, that first leg will be after that game, that FA Cup game. So we could actually do with Villa losing their last 2 Champions League games, just so they've got that one eye on that when we go and play them in that next round. So yeah, between the 11th and 12th of Feb is the knockout phase of the Champions League. And at the moment, Villa are not in it because they're going to qualify automatically. However, if they were to lose their last 2 games, there's a chance that they might have to play that week. So there's all that to throw into the mix as well. So look, it could work out in our favour. It might not. But do you know what? I'm glad we've got a Premier League team in the next round after today's showing. Yeah. I think we won't see a Timo Werner playing as a striker against a Villa. So I'm going to take it like that. But yeah, look, it's one of those games. Unai Emery didn't do well in the Cup last year, so he's trying to prove himself, and Ange is exactly the same. But yeah, it's going to be a defining week for us completely, because obviously we've got Liverpool in the second part of the semi-final, and then it could go to extra time. We don't know what result it's going to be, and then we've obviously got to play Villa probably on the Sunday at the moment. If they ain't got a game on, if they do qualify, it might be on Monday, so we might get quite lucky in that sense. But yeah, Villa's probably the one team I saw in that draw out of all the Premier League teams that were kind of left that I kind of thought, you know what, they're so up and down in the cups as well in the past few years. That's probably the team that I'll probably go for. I'm not unhappy with this draw, but at the same time, Villa are capable of beating us as well. So we'll see. Yep. It all depends. It all depends on the next couple of weeks.
We will. There you go. That's our thoughts, of course, of Spurs' 4th round draw against Aston Villa to come. As I said, it comes in a match-defining or season-defining week for the football club in terms of those cup competitions. Let's take our mind back, actually, to the lineup for this one. And again, we're going to get really quick thoughts from the listeners and viewers. We're going to bring their statements into the show and get the guys before we dissect the game. But Spurs boss Ange Postecoglou decided to rest Dominic Solanke and Dejan Kulusevski, who actually opted to be back on the bench. Radu Dragic and Archie Gray continue to play every game as centre-backs. Mikey Moore returned to action following that virus to make his FA Cup full debut for Tottenham. James Maddison, Pat Matasawa back after missing out from the Carabao Cup semi-final against Liverpool through suspension. But Rodrigo Bentancur will be out for a couple of weeks with concussion protocols after banging his head early on in that match. Timo Werner, Sergio Reguilon were handed rare starts. And Postecoglou had already said that new goalkeeper, Anton Kinski, would start to increase his game sharpness after less than a month without a game due to the Czech League shutting down in mid-December. Now, that team for Spurs read Kinski, Porro, Dragic, Gray, Reguilon, Sarr, Basuma, Maddison, Johnson, Werner, Moore, with a bench of Austin Spence, Dorrington, Bergvall, Olasise, Kulusevski, Son, Solanke, Lancashire. Now, interesting, look, I think I made that point in the first half of the show that I'm a great believer in going strong, trying to win it, and then substituting those players later in the game if we need to, because we have been here before when it's come to Tottenham with weakened sides. And again, we make that point that all the 3 goals came in the extra time. And I think many would have liked to see that game obviously secured earlier without having to bring on most of the first teamers. But I think what that game would have done for many is give a real eye-opener into how much work is still need to be done in the squad. Now, look, we've had a whole host of viewer and listener statements in here. Cameron Yardy Jr. says, Ricky will be buzzing Spurs to qualify for the next round of the Cup. And his question is, my question is, shouldn't Spurs just play their strong team, score the goals, then substitute the players? When Spurs play a weakened team for these cup games, it's often a weak team, and the squad simply isn't there yet to be able to fully rotate. Russ, I'll get your quick thoughts on that question. I'll then pose one to Miles and Cracks when we get into the game itself. What's your thoughts on the selection for you?
I couldn't believe we didn't start with the centre forward. I was also surprised that Alfie Dorrington didn't get a start. You wonder whether really he has to leave the club.
Well, can I just say, Russ, on that point, before you carry on there, we understand that Alfie Dorrington, friend of the show, John Wenham, has confirmed he's closing in on rest of the season on loan to Aberdeen. So that's our understanding. Despite being on the bench for this one, he will hopefully complete a move for his perspective to Aberdeen, where he will get first-team football. Sorry to interrupt you, please carry on.
The only thing I would say, going strong, it's a good point from our listener or viewer. The problem is the manager's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't, because if he goes strong with his best possible 11 that he can play, and he gets a couple of injuries, and all of us are going to be saying, well, why on earth did he do that? Why didn't he hold him in reserve? he might not have had to bring him on, you know. So I do understand what you're saying, and the person who asked the question is saying, Rick, you know, go strong, then take him off. It's a risky business, particularly on a plastic pitch.
Mm. You know, on these points, I've got a load of questions that have come in. And Miles, you won't be surprised to hear a lot of these questions are being dominated by the inclusion of Timo Werner. Some suggesting that maybe you shouldn't have got the minutes. Some suggesting that we should be sending him back. Our understanding is, to be clear on Timo Werner's future, and Ange Postecoglou has said this publicly, is that Werner will not be leaving the football club during this January transfer window. And Ange has made this clear. We just simply don't have the bodies at the moment to allow Werner to return back to his parent club, Leipzig. And our understanding is also Leipzig don't particularly want to sign, or don't want really to have Werner back at the football club. So just on that point there, around the selection and the questions that we've had, Andy YO115 says, we all know Werner needs to go. So why has Ange started him again as a striker and not Lancashire? Johnson offers so little in the game, and how can you get more out of him? What's your question? What's your answer back to that question, Miles, for you?
Look, Chairman was there today. Ange's making a statement. I'm kind of went, this is what you're giving me. This is what he basically said, that this is what you're giving me. Look, with Timo Werner, it's definitely a mental block, because you look at this. Let's go to his chance where he's one-on-one. He's making the run. He's making the right run. As a footballer, you can see that he is good in certain areas. However, it's that mental block in front of goal, and I don't understand why the club have not put more into him off the pitch if they're going to outlay all this money for him, because you can clearly see there's a mental block there. Why is no one looking at this guy and going, he's a nice guy, but it's just when he gets in front of goal, he panics. He just really panics, and he's been panicking for years. And if you go back to his Leipzig days, that one season where he ended up scoring like 20 or 30 odd goals, someone must be looking at this going, Werner, let's see what's in your head, and let's dissect it, because you can clearly see he makes the right runs. Sometimes he's doing the right thing. Yes, he can't hold it up, but he was never able to. But when I look at his one-on-one finishing, there was a moment in his career he was able to do it every week. So for me, I can see why Ange tried it, but like I said in that first half, it wasn't completely down to him. There are other players on that pitch that also, you know, didn't help, because it's not like when Dominic Solanke came on. Okay, yes, Werner moved over to the left, but it wasn't like we created chances and we were scoring. The same thing exactly happened. We got back into this game via an own goal. Let that sink in. That is how we ended up winning this game, and that's when Tamworth completely collapsed. But fair play to Tamworth. I know we're going to sit here and complain about Spurs, but Tamworth for me today, they were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. They were if you were putting your life, all of them could come off that pitch. They were disappointed when they lost, and this is they were losing to the Premier League side. But you have to give them credit where credit's due. They defended in numbers. They didn't allow Spurs to play, and it was one of them typical cup performances. It's that we were on the wrong end of it today. Yeah. But look, Werner's Werner. We haven't really got anything else in reserve, because if we're being realistic, the person after Solanke will be Richarlison. After Richarlison, it's his son. Yep. And then it's probably going to be Lancashire at a later date. But if you go back to Lancashire, I know everyone's calling out for Lancashire as well, but look at Mikey Moore's performance in that first half. Let these players breathe. Let them slowly get into the first team, because Lancashire's performance, you got to remember, the last time he put a Spurs shot on, he got sent off because he was frustrated. That's right. Yep. So that's right. And Ange, as we know, actually said that on audio, that it's really important that players, Miles, to come back to you, didn't lose their head. Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. And I think if we would have played Lancashire from the start today, I think he would have got frustrated again, because he wouldn't have got no clear-cut chances. Like, he got one in Galatasaray, but even in Galatasaray, he didn't play extremely well because his wingers let him down that day too. And that's exactly what we're having at the moment. Get decent wingers. The striker business, as we saw last season with Son playing up top, it just becomes kind of irrelevant. But we'll see. We'll see. Werner's Werner. We know what we're getting. Yeah, and that's the thing. I will just say that we had over 35 questions, and 31 of them are Werner based. So, I mean, there's only so much you can say on him. We know really his deficiencies. We know that he's really up to the level. But just to be clear, at the moment, he's not going anywhere, and the Tottenham are going to actually sign 3 wingers during this window, and they'll send him back. But according to Ange, and again, you wonder, Ange did say we wouldn't sign another goalkeeper, and we did. So, I mean, I wouldn't say never, ever, trust what Ange says about Werner, but as things stand, he's going to stay here. Cracks, a final question before we look back at the game. Mr. W, Welly UK says,
What a show. Well, a UK, Mr. W. What a show, man. Here. Cut off ones. Where do we find a leader on the pitch who'll dig out the players out disrupting what can be good about the team? Someone should have been given a rollicking for the living daylights out of that team for 90 minutes straight, but everyone is far too friendly and accepting of that performance. What do you about those comments?
I mean, do you know what, Rick? I don't think in today's football that rock and roll, blood and thunder type of footballer exists anymore in some respects. I don't think you do get those rollickers in the dressing room. I just don't. I think they're a different breed and a different animal. I think the days of somebody like Steve Perryman having somebody up the wall at half time because they just haven't been putting it in are gone. I think you get leaders on the pitch, and I think rather than in dressing rooms, I don't know if they exist, but I don't know. We look like we're crying out for some real quality in the middle there, don't we? We just that doesn't do blood and thunder and rollicking as such. Just leads by example with what they can actually do. I don't know. I don't know if that player, that type of player, is really there. Maybe they are, and we don't see it so much because it doesn't get out into the public domain. But for all his faults and all his slowing down of play, we're missing like a Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, aren't we? He used to come on with maybe 20, 25 minutes to go, and he would break stuff up. Now, if you want to go on to be winning stuff and being successful and being sustained success, it's not with a Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. But where we are now, I do think we are missing that type of player that could come on, as I used to call him, Rick, the dustman. And
are we not seeing Archie
up.
Gray? Forgive me, is Archie Gray that player, but we just simply haven't had a chance to see him yet in his natural position? Because to be fair to Archie, and again another positive thing out of that one, Archie again has he's played every position bar the one that he actually sees his future being. In terms of being that number 6. I mean, is Archie Gray that player for you, or do you think this will be in addition to Archie that we're going to need a player that you refer there? But also you make that point, they may not be about anymore in this modern day age, like what Tottenham will pay and will look for to get.
Well, I mean, he certainly seems to have the mental attitude for it. He comes from a fine footballing family. And even Bergvall, he's beginning to show signs, as I said to you in the last show that I'd done, that he's just filling out his shirt physically and as a player and as a person. But, these are two 18-year-olds. So you're kind of 6, 7, 8 years away, because players do go on into their early to mid 30s. He is 6, 7, 8 years away, either one of those, from being that player. And like I always say to you, when you're the 8th richest club in the world, charging the prices that you do, what you should be bringing in a player that is ready to be that player now, right now. Just slot in and go, okay, I'm at number 6. I'm running this game. I'm running this team. And you allow an Archie Gray or a Bergvall to develop up around them and eventually come through and take over. As it stands, at 18 years old, even if you've got that attitude to be that player, you're a long way off being fully developed, both as a footballer and physically as well. So, that's the type of player that we do need to get in. But I agree with Marlon, whereas I thought that was one of our real pinch points and weak points, down those wings as well. We've got to start addressing those wingers, because I mean, Johnson has chipped in with a good few goals this season, but he's got to develop his game. He has to develop more into his game if you're going to go on to get any sort of sustained success. There's got to be more there from either him or somebody else coming in that can give you that. So I think those are 3 real pinch points in our team at the moment, is that one player in the middle and the 2 wingers. That's where we've really got to start spending some decent money that we can afford to spend. We really can. So it's all very well having this young talent. It's exciting young talent, and I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. But you also need the here and now. You've got to have it. You've got to have it. And if you're Daniel Levy and you're asking people to pay the prices that they're paying, then he should be supplying it. He should actually be supplying it. We're not paying the prices for a project. That's futures dealing. If you're a dealer in the city, like a trader, if you're buying futures, you're paying pennies, absolute pennies for stuff and hoping that it comes about. Otherwise, if you want established stocks, you've got to be paying hundreds of pounds for ICI and Shell and BP and what have you. So we start needing some real blue chip stocks in certain positions. That's what we're really missing.
Yeah, and Rick,
Russ, please. Yep.
Just very quickly, the club now has quite a bit of area to move in as far as FFP is concerned as well. So they can spend money. It's whether there's a willingness. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, that's always the key, isn't it? I mean, look, the window's open now, and the reality is that we're day 13 for our listeners on audio. Once this show does eventually go out, eventually over 2 halves. Honestly, don't get us started. And the reality is, we know that there can and there should be more to be done. And everyone, that the key influential people that would have been sat watching that game today will see that we haven't got, in my opinion, the depth of squad to be able to compete over 4 competitions. And when you're seeing Tottenham, with no respect to Tamworth, because again, we made this point in the actual intro of the show, absolute credit to them. But, again, we have to make that point. We're 65 places, I believe. I'm doing a disservice. We're 96 places beneath us, 16th in the National League, and we're being taken to extra time to take the tie to the 4th round. I mean, that's when you know that the club definitely have to have some more depth in that squad. And, again, we'll make that point.
Rick, can I just interject there? I don't think today's an indicator of where you are, because the cup does throw up anomalies like today. That does happen. What concerns me more is our league position. That's the indicator of where you are. Not games like today where, a lower league team are having their World Cup final. That can and does happen on a plastic pitch in very, very unusual surroundings and circumstances. The real indicator of where we are is that league position. And it's mid to lower mid table. So that tells you everything of where we are and who we are. Rick, can you just bring up that picture once again, by the way, of Daniel Levy?
You have to.
Yeah, because I've got one small observation. The lady in the green hat in the second row down.
She's not our chief scout, is she?
Is the gentleman next to her on OnlyFans or something, and she's having a peek over at his phone? Because she looks like he's looking at something on his phone he really shouldn't be looking at, doesn't he?
I have to say, for our listeners on audio,
I'm sure he's not. Let me make that clear. I'm sure he's absolutely not, and it's just a moment captured in a picture. I know how litigious this club can be. That's not the case. I am just making a joke.
We've been shut down once already, Cracks, in the first hour. I mean, twice would be a record.
Can I just ask a quick question on something that Crackers said?
Please, Miles.
Do you not think the league position and the way we actually dealt with the cup game today are actually linked? Because if we were probably in better form and had better, we were performing better in the league, actually today doesn't really happen because the players are at a better level, if that makes some sort of sense.
Very fair. Very fair.
And that's probably why we have gone to Tamworth today in the cup, and seen that performance, because actually when some of these players have played in the Premier League, they haven't performed. So they're going to go to away, and Crackers is right, going on a plastic pitch. However, these guys have probably been training on the plastic pitch at Hotspur away all week. Have probably done it more than once this season. So it shouldn't have been nothing really new for them, where the interchanging in between the two. So for me right now, I'm looking at going, the players right now, you can clearly see we're disjointed somewhere in the club or in the squad, and it needs to be rectified. And that's why I look at the signing of Kinski today. You know, people were right. Actually, Forster coming in, no matter how good he's done, first minute of this game today, because Kinski makes a great save to keep us in this game. First minute. Yeah. And everyone kind of forgets that because they look at the last minute. So for me right now, it's just kind of looking at going, if the league position was, if we could just get our league position better, I think we'll start to see better performances against these lower leagues in the cup. It's just going to be when we play the bigger boys, because at the moment, when we played Manchester United and Manchester City, different performance, because they've been badly performing in the league, they're able to get themselves up for these cup games, and Liverpool as well now included. So it's kind of just having that happy balance at the moment, which I don't think we have.
That's absolutely fair. Look, we're going to skip through a lot of that first half to not put everyone back through it twice. But Noru, as you touched upon there, Miles, nearly scored in the opening minute. From the beginning, Noru drove forward, beating his man. Everton's goal was saved by Kinski for a corner. And look, the first half a lot was along the lines of Porro. He switched off from the ball as the Lambs really pushed Spurs in that first half, and a corner that Singh claimed, as there was a feeling that game this was not going to be an easy one. I think we saw it from the opening minute. Crini was called for offside as Porro attempted to whip the ball in, but it went out for a goal kick. And it was a game very much where Spurs were really struggling to deal with at times the intensity of Tamworth. Yes, I've said that on the show. We're struggling very much to deal with the intensity of Tamworth. How much more will they drag us down this season? Again, Honora driving forward. He found McClintock with a cross. His effort was well struck, but Gray blocked it for a corner. We made that point, actually, that I will make this point. Gray had a really good performance with Tottenham. I think you touched on it, Miles, that Dragoshin, to be fair, in difficult conditions, really stood up a number of times. Bissouma, no doubt about it, over the course of the game, was Tottenham's best player, head and shoulders. Singh was called into action late on in that first half as he saved an effort from James Maddison. And the following corner was cleared by Crompton. Spurs then worked the ball down the right wing as Porro looked to find a teammate. His cross was over hit for a throw. And that was kind of the way in which that first half did peter out. In the end, there was 1 minute to be added on. And it was one of those games where people won't want to hear it, but Spurs with most of the ball, I think, were really trying to figure out the artificial service, which I know people think, Rick, come on, Rick. They're non-league. They're 96 places below us. Please, Rick, you can't kid a kidder here. How can you sit there and say they're trying to figure out the artificial turf? But I'm going to be honest, that's how I felt that first half was. Tottenham were trying to, in my opinion, get some cohesion in the game, which they never really got. And Tamworth, as Crackers said, they made it really, really hard for us. But look, we've got no doubt about it. In terms of the quality of player that Tottenham got in comparison to Tamworth,
Rick, be under no illusion with them pitches as well. Where I live, we have no grass pitches. We've got, I think we've got 14 or 15 stadiums here on the island. And every one of those pitches plays in a very, very different way. The pitches here in Tanaho will play completely different to a pitch up the north in area. Or if a pitch is 2 years old and one's a year old or one's 5 years old. They all play very, very differently. So, I mean, if they've been training all week on a plastic pitch,
which we know they didn't, they only trained for 1 day, just to be clear, and so they trained on Saturday.
I'll guarantee you that pitch will play beautifully at Hotspur away and probably indoors, and that one today will play absolutely differently. I know this is sounding a little bit Arteta. It's the ball. But that is actually a fact that should not and absolutely should not factor into us not being able to skittle them within 90 minutes. Absolutely not. But that is a fact and a detail within what's sort of fed into the day.
Just we'll come on to the second half. Russ, any complaints about the weather or the ball? Any concerns you want to raise? Or
no whatsoever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Just the players.
Russ looks like he's been through this twice. We have on this show. I tell you, we have. Look, 2 areas that where Spurs let themselves down that first 45 was quite honestly the technical ability and the mental ability of trying to get that game into some kind of equal footing of trying to find a way forward. Now, Creaney held off Gray, who pulled him back for a Tamworth free kick. They delivered it in, but the flag was raised for offside. It just felt that this game, with all due respect, especially in the second half, you were thinking where Spurs were going to get the first goal from, because it was never a game that you ever felt Tottenham were in control of or in managing, or felt that at any point, really, we are going to go on and score. You know, we had points where Moore got to the byline, kicked across to the back post, where Werner's header was cleared off the line, to be fair to him. And then we saw Hollis channel his inner Maradona. He took on two players under pressure. He then pirouetted away. And then we made that point, like I say, moments later, Werner's header was cleared off the line. Johnson played through Werner one-on-one, where we've discussed this already on this show. Yeah, I'm going to be able to say to you, I think any Tottenham fan that's watched Tottenham over the last 12, 18 months since Werner's joined the club didn't really have much confidence of Werner going through their one-on-one and scoring. And again, Werner was to be denied by the goalkeeper. Johnson shinned his effort wide. And I think the main gripe with Johnson that we touched on this show is that he never really tries to deceive his fullback. He's always one that chooses the exact same decision as the obvious one, which makes him quite predictable. Now, we've very much praised Johnson on this show in terms of his goal input, but I just wonder, Russ, you know, Cracker said there about Johnson, we need to see more. We're criticising a player that has scored the most goals in all competitions for Spurs this season. Is it fair, Russ, the criticism that he's getting right now from the Spurs fan base, given it's only his second season? Or do you as a fan still need to see more from Brennan Johnson to show you that he's evolving and getting better as a player, despite the goal input being further up?
Yeah, I think it's a case of a lot of people feel if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, really. But, you know, I think Brennan Johnson has showed glimmers of the player that he can become, for me, by scoring goals and doing the right things with the football. But where we've got a problem, Rick, and Marlon absolutely nailed it earlier, is that we don't have wingers who are threatening as much as they should be and providing the ammunition for Dominic Solanke. And it's an area that we absolutely need to look at. And Brennan Johnson, even though he's young, is one of those two or three wing play players that we've got. I mean, Odebear we haven't seen that much of because, sadly for him, he got injured. But, you know, Sonny has not been playing well on the left when he's played there, and that's usually quite a lot. He showed a couple of good bits today, didn't he, when he got into the penalty area, nearly made a goal, but we've seen him kind of slip away. And I think it's symptomatic of the problems that we've got on the wings. We're getting the ball to Dom Solanke, who's, for my money, I said it at the start of the show, is getting better. And funny enough, I think he's a proper centre forward. We've got him, and that may, fingers crossed, be the difference on Wednesday. But I'm sure you want our predictions before we disappear. But he's a proper centre forward. He needs proper service, and he's not getting it at the moment. And that includes Brennan.
Yeah, totally agree on those points. And it's interesting, you know, we talk about the closing of that first 90 minutes there. Don't worry, there's not another 90, just to be very clear. When I say the first 90, I'm not putting you through another 90, because that will, I think, kill us off, and we will fall off there permanently at this rate, the way the show is going. But there was a moment, like I say, towards the end of that game where I think many thought, oh my God, Spurs are going to lost this. And, you know, Kinski low save presents a disaster for Tottenham as we do head into extra time. And I've got to be honest with you, in this moment, Cracks, 95 minutes, how concerned are you as that shot goes in and Kinski thankfully collects? Do you think, oh, we've got away with that? Was there a worry, Cracks, we were heading out? To be honest, was you worried we were heading out?
I mean, he's not connected with it. As if he gets a good connection on that shot, we are done. That's it. It's all over for another year. And, you know, Tamworth players become more famous than the two pigs that escaped in 1988 and run around the town for about 20 days. It's probably the most famous thing from Tamworth. Russ remembers. It's only us old ones that remember this. But there you go. That is the difference. That is why they're National League player and why Premiership players are Premiership players. You know, he just hasn't quite got hold of that. If he did, we were sunk. we were absolutely done. But by that stage, it should have been a consolation goal, shouldn't it? It should just have been a consolation. We should have been, maybe 2 or 3 up by them. But that was real heart in the mouth moment, wasn't it? It really was. But he didn't. He'll be laying in bed tonight replaying that shot over and over and over.
Any better connection, Cracks, you're spot on there. That would have been a real difficulty to keep out. And look, fair play. We've praised Kinski a lot in this show, in the first part as well, just to be very, very clear. That, look, we got away with it. We got it to extra time. I say we got it to extra time. I think we do say it. We got it to extra time because towards the end of that game, Tamworth were the ones pushing for a winner. And, Ange, in the end, responded on the back of that 90 minutes, making a triple change where Son, Spence and Kulusevski came on for Werner, Reguilon and Maddison. And look, to be honest with you, a real scrappy goal saw Spurs take the lead. I mean, many would say at this point it was really harsh on Tamworth, who were really fighting for themselves, thinking we've got a genuine chance here. And, we look at the point, Solanke bundles it home after a scramble, but it has been given as an own goal. Relief, Marlon, is that the word that be used correctly here when you see Solanke in the end help bundle that one home for 1-0? Did you feel confident that we would see the game out? I can't believe I'm talking like this. I can't believe I'm talking like this against National League, 96 places below us, Tamworth. What has happened to this football club? What has happened to us? Go on, Mark.
Look, if anyone who celebrated that first goal should be shameless.
Players were embarrassed. The players were embarrassed.
Everyone was embarrassed. Look, at the end of the day, it went in, but we can't be celebrating that. That is just it was like, oh my God, have we really scored? And we haven't even scored it. That was the most embarrassing thing. We didn't even score it. It was down to them. But look, after we scored, I kind of knew it was going to be one-way traffic. I did look, once you got Solanke on, you've got Son on, Bergvall, the team's starting to get some of the informed players on the pitch. So you kind of knew where it was going. And you could see that poor old Tamworth, they did, I'm going to say it, they did so well to keep themselves and get themselves.
I felt bad for them. As much as I'm a Tottenham fan, Miles, as a football
purist, as an FA Cup, as a purist, and as Crackers is the magic of the FA Cup. It was quite heartbreaking on one sense because you're going, they don't deserve to go out like this. As if we'd gone and beaten 4 or 5-0, you go fair play. But to go out into extra time and be on an own goal, we had to score the second or third, otherwise it would have been way more embarrassing. I think I only saw one person in the whole of the YouTube world celebrate that goal. I'm not going to mention him because he knows who he is, right? But it was shameless. But however, I think we can now be happy about the situation because we know that what happened to the Gooners later. So I'm just gonna. It just puts things in perspective a little bit. But look, we're through. We've got through it.
Yeah.
But that first goal was just like, I can't believe they had to score it for us. They've had to open them up.
Oh yeah, on that point, listen, we made that point. I mean, Kulusevski made it 2-0 to Spurs. A lovely low finish after a Son pass, and Son again contributing to that for Sonny in terms of his contribution now. 130 GAs, 84 goals, 46 assists. A lovely finish from Dejan Kulusevski. To be fair, Russ, like many occasions this season, Dejan has been that player ready to dig us out of difficult holes. And again, Kulusevski showing his class when he came onto the pitch, Russ, and scoring yet another goal. Great finish.
Yeah, it was a beautiful finish. Great goal against any team. Let's hope for more on Wednesday. But that was it when it was, okay, we're through. And look, there's a smile. They know they're going into the next round of the FA Cup. And, despite everything we've said and spoken about and all the comments on the show, at the end of the day, it was about that in between a difficult semi-final and playing in North London derby. And yes, we were awful, but that was a great goal. And without him, you have to wonder where we'd be.
Yeah, you do have to wonder. Like I say, a great finish from Dejan Kulusevski.
I know we're 12, by the way, Rick. But that could be the point.
Yeah, you make that point. Where would we be without Dejan Kulusevski? I don't want to think about that. Let's think about that on a different show, please, God. Not right now. Johnson firing on loose ball to make it 3-0 to Tottenham. And by that time, it was the game academic, Spurs winning a 3-0. Yeah, FA Cup tie, which I think, look, we say this with all due respect, that I think many that would have been on planet Mars and picked up the newspaper the next day will think, okay, Tamworth 0, Spurs 3. Fairly comprehensive win. Spurs getting the job done. But I think for those that were there watching the game and seeing it pan out, it shouldn't be anywhere near as close to what it should have done. But look, Spurs are in the next round of the hat We do know we've got Aston Villa away to come. The guys have covered that, like I say, 6 out of the last 10 victories for Spurs against Villa have been pretty impressive. So they go to Villa in fairly decent form. Villa, to be fair, they've had one eye really, it feels, on the Champions League for a lot of the season. Haven't been able to really replicate their form of last season in the Premier League under Unai Emery. And to be fair, they've only, again, recently crashed out the Carabao Cup. And again, they're still involved in the Champions League. So we have to wonder how that will impact them in terms of this game. But we mentioned that point. For Villa, it would have been a free week. So I think for Tottenham, with the way that week will pan out, they'll be under more pressure. So, guys, I'll ask you, look, we spoke about there the fact Arsenal have themselves crashed out the FA Cup. They've gone out to Manchester United. And you know what? There are some murmurings now across the other side of North London that they're not too happy with the manager. And it does feel like the Spurs fixture now, in where for their season, they've had a situation where they've, in the last 3-4 days, potentially got out of 2 cup competitions. That Newcastle take a 2-0 lead back home to St James's Park when Arsenal visit the second leg. And Arsenal may be seeing their season implode in front of our eyes. And for what's been a Spurs season, where let's be honest, from a Premier League perspective, it's one to forget. I'll start with you, Cracks, on this. If we go to Arsenal and win, how much does that make our feelings change about this season in general? Or because again, Spurs are still in all the cup competitions. We are mid-January. This would seriously put a dent in any of their own title aspirations. How do you see that North London derby, where I know we've got a great show coming up with Lee Judges, who's going to be previewing that one with us on the Tuesday, and then got back you for Wednesday when you're back on for the game itself. How do you see that game being against Arsenal now? Maybe not in terms of bragging rights, but in terms of how much it will have a detrimental effect on their league position rather than our own at the moment.
Well, it's just always a huge game, Ricky, isn't it? And even, you know, if we're down in the dumps and they're flying high, you never seem to get normally like the result that you think you're going to get, and vice versa. So, you know, a lot of this, I think it's a bit like maybe with Brennan Johnson and Timo Werner. Werner's getting absolute pelters because he's the man in the barrel at the moment, and Johnson maybe not so much. And then you look at somebody like Arteta that doesn't seem to get so much press stick, and then somebody like Ange who does. But let's have it right with Arteta. He's won 1 FA Cup in lockdown with Unai Emery's team, and then since then, nothing. He's come close a couple of times, and he's progressed them, but he hasn't got them to where they want to be and they thought they were going to be after spending a hell of a lot of money. You know, there's a lot of talent that's been brought in now. So, you know, if we go there Wednesday and do something, wow. I mean, that really does, you know, that changes the perception of what our season is, because a lot of our season, you know, even if it just moves us up to 11, beating your rivals like that, it always helps. Always helps. If you can beat them home and away in a season, that will help. I know that sounds a little bit West Ham. I don't care if we finish bottom because we beat Tottenham home and away this season. But yeah, a lot of it is your media darlings and your media villains, and who sort of fits a narrative of being, you know, having a go at them, like with Werner, when maybe, you know, Son or a Johnson probably needs just as much stick sometimes as a Werner does, but Werner's always that man that gets a stick. And as I said to you, I think Arteta can be that little bit of a golden boy that doesn't really get that much heat as much as maybe some others do, until you start, you know, bearing down into the bones of it and looking at what he's actually done and achieved. So come Wednesday, we could put them right in the mud. Absolutely in the mud, couldn't we? Absolutely right in it. And just give ourselves such a huge lift for what's been, in league terms, a disappointing season. There's been some fleeting moments and a few flickers here and there of you know, some good results, but generally well, your league position always tells you everything. We're 12th. That's just not good enough. That is not good enough. And you can argue that this is a start of a project and there's players missing, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, come Wednesday, everything goes out the window, Rick, doesn't it? Your league position, the cup, the this or that, it comes down to that 90 minutes. And if you do it, you're top of the world, isn't you? Absolutely top of the world.
Totally agree. We've got an interesting few days in store and last one on Spurs Cracks. Thank you so much. We'll be back with us for a couple of those to come. It's going to be an interesting few days in store. Russell, come round to you. I'm so sorry, time-wise. We meant to start
That's
3 hours
right.
ago. And we're closing now. Russ, how big is the Arsenal game for you personally? And what's been, let's be honest, about a disappointing domestic campaign, but one where the Cups are very much still alive and kicking? How big is that Arsenal game for you? And do you look at Arsenal now, given the form that they're in, the way they've conveniently looks like gone out of one cup, they could be going out of another? Their seasons like they are imploding in front of their faces. They've seen Jesus carried off on a stretcher during that game as well. It's a difficult time over at the moment. Do you feel Spurs can take advantage of this Arsenal side and Arsenal team right now?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, Rick. I don't care about Arsenal captain Scarlett and his boys.
Yep.
Not interested. I think we'll get something out of the game. And I think we'll get something out of the game because we've got a centre forward and they haven't. And I think it could be the difference. I might be delusional. I mean, if we get something out of the game, it's great for us. Then we've got to go to Everton. If we don't get something out of the game, Everton then becomes a big game. Everyone talking about Ange again. And so the roller coaster that is Spurs goes on. But I've just got a feeling that, and I hope I'm right, otherwise you look more stupid than normal.
Well, you can't be that stupid, Russ. We're Spurs fans.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I honestly, I mean, I live with one, a gooner, and honestly, I never discuss it. Don't care. Listen to their little barb comments. Not interested. Yes, it's a big game, and I hope to hear some crying from on the pillow next to me. That'd be nice.
Russ, we can't thank you enough. We're going to see you for, one of 2 David Moyes returning games for Everton at home. They've got 2 big games to come. You'll be back with us for the Everton game, Russ. We can't thank you enough. Like I say, it's been a tricky evening, but we've got there in the end. Just like our FA Cup draw.
There you go. 2-1. There you go.
2-1 Spurs. There you go. Miles will close with you. You'll be back with us very, very soon as well. It's interesting. Many are actually suggesting the fact that when you look at the league, I said about murmurs about Arteta. Jordan says here, look, Pep murmurs, Howe murmurs early in the season, Emery struggling. Does that not tell you how unpredictable the season has been for the entire Premier League? Maybe outside Liverpool and Chelsea, who are actually going through their little bit of a wobble now as well, Chelsea. How really inconsistent this league has been. I mean, how would you describe where we're at now at the point of where Spurs to go to Arsenal and get a result? And just to be clear on that, where we are, Tottenham just won one of their last 31 Premier League away games against Arsenal and are winless in 13 since a 3-2 victory in November 2010. Shout out to our regular viewer and listener, John Jules, for that stat. Can it be doable given the pressure they're under at the moment?
Oh, of course. No, it can be. And I tell you this, I will be shameless if Spurs beat Arsenal. And if it was Werner and Johnson that came up with the winners, if them 2 came up with the winners, you would not hear me say a bad word about them on Last Word on Spurs or anything I did for the rest of the seasons. Sign them up. It'd be worth every little penny. But no, in all seriousness, look, Arsenal are in a bad state at the moment, and that's two home games on the trot. They've lost to Newcastle, and to be honest, Newcastle were really good. And Manchester United today, up until it went to 10 men, were on them. It was actually, considering how the previous game went in early December, Man United really had them on the ropes, and they've got injuries now up top, which is kind of going and falling into our favour, even though we've got injuries at the back. But we can... Look, if Ange plays as he did against Manchester United and Manchester City in some shape or form, I can see some sort of result. But it's Spurs, and do you know, when it comes to this game, it's the 2 games of season that I look forward to, but I hate at the same time, and I just want to beat them. I don't care where we I'll be honest. I don't care where we finish in the league. If we were to beat them twice, I'm happy. I'm happy for the whole season. I've got bragging rights. And I know Ange doesn't want me to think like that because he's come out and said, no, we can't think like that. They're not our worry. But, you know, I've been old enough and ugly enough to know that I don't like these boys. And you can see it with, you know, the way they're playing right now and the way the fans are getting on their managers' back. They are feeling the pressure and the heat. And the reason why is because of Manchester City's blip. They thought they would just come in and get on the mantelpiece. But Arne Slot at the moment seems to be just making sure that Arsenal fans are panicking. And like the question's right, it has been an unpredictable season. And even the fact that Chelsea have been playing so well is unpredictable because the way they've been under this ownership. So look, this league is not finished for anybody apart from Southampton. But it's going to be, look, at the end of the day, this is why the Premier League is one of the most exciting and why it's one of the most loved, watched, and why we're able to, you know, attract all this audience to these platforms. This is why we love it. So at the end of the day, North London's going to be one hell of a game. It's probably come at the wrong time for both teams with injuries and stuff. But this is what it's about. Who has got the mettle? Who's got the squad? Who's got the, you know, everything to push forward? But I'm actually quite looking forward to it. But I ask me on Monday or Tuesday, and I'll be telling you, Red, oh my God, I feel sick.
I don't think it's ever a game you can enjoy. It's only if you win it, you enjoy it. It's just trying to get through it, really. I don't know anyone that can enjoy the game. To finish with Andy's comments, and was asked about the thoughts of Tamworth and the way they played. He went, look, firstly, credit to Tamworth. I thought they gave everything and gave a really good account of themselves. We'd all be changing for us with a surface that made it really difficult for us to play on in the manner we wanted to. It's easy to get frustrated on days like this, but the lads kept their heads, were clear, calm and persisted, and eventually overpowered them. I thought our goalkeeper Kingsley made a number of good saves. There are a couple of players like Mike who probably played more minutes than I wanted him to, but he actually grew into the game, was having a really good spell when I took him off, but he hasn't played for 2 months. The rest of the boys I felt were really comfortable and were trying to play their football as much as they could. He said it's great to get Mikey back. I think he's itching to get back as well. He's missed a fair bit of football. It just adds another attacking threat to us. And I'm sure after the game, he'll feel better as well. He was a little bit rusty at the start, but he definitely grew into that game. He said, look, it's a beauty of the tournament. I'm sure Tamworth will remember this day as they should because their team played really, really well. And they'll remember it because it's a unique experience for us in terms of the kind of challenge that we had. He did it. Actually, I enjoyed it. It was a good day. He was asked about the thoughts of there being no replay for Tamworth. And he said, look, I get the sentiment. At the same time, I've been banging about having less games. So it's a balancing act. The way the calendar is at the moment, it will be almost impossible for us to fit in another game. We're already struggling to fit them in as it is. I understand the sentiment around it. And I certainly believe the competition and what it does offer every part of the football pyramid needs to be adhered to and it should be protected. And was actually asked to close on the facts around Kinski. He went, this is one of the unique things Tamworth offers because every time they get the ball in your half, it's about how you deal with the throw-ins and the free kicks. And you have to defend your box really well. I thought Tony did ever so well, handled the game really well in terms of the way he composed himself to deal with those situations because it's a bit of a lottery as to where that ball does end up, particularly the way Tamworth were launching it into our box. But it was good for Tony to get through that. And was asked finally, is it a frustration that playing 2 hours of football with Arsenal to come in the midweek? He said no. The main thing is that we got the job done. We got through, whether it's 90 minutes or whatever it was. The main important thing was that we are in the hat. I want to close the show to give you all the opportunity very quickly, guys. Cracks, I think it's only right, just to close this. The show, I think we just give Tamworth all the absolute credit. You know, these are part-time guys, electricians, butchers in there. All these different types of jobs they do. They've taken a Tottenham side, you know, right to the brink of nearly getting a victory. So look, often the show, look, we're Spurs fans first and foremost, but you can acknowledge an opposition when they've played their heart out. So I want to say absolute credit to Tamworth, their fans. You know, again, I know there was some comments towards Andrews weren't quite nice, but that's for another day. We can don't take the show overboard. But finally, cracks for Tamworth, a lovely day out for them. And I'm sure they'll be disappointed that they aren't in the round of the next hat because at times they could deserve to be so.
No, well, listen, not one of those players can go to bed tonight with any sort of shame or they done that team, that town proud. I know that sounds a little bit condescending, but you know, they came and gave everything today. And brilliant for them. You know, they brought in a lot of revenue. As I said at the top of the show, and they actually played really well. They were solid. They were difficult to break down, and they done brilliant. On another day, they could have turned that ball in on 95 minutes and 51 seconds, and that would have been it. They'd have been going to 14 miles down the road from Tamworth to Aston Villa away. They would have had a local derby. But don't forget, even if we had lost today, that still wouldn't have been our most embarrassing loss. Let's not forget that the self-proclaimed greatest manager ever, Jose Mourinho, the man who is his own tribute band, went to Dynamo Zagreb, and like Mr. Bridger in The Italian Job, had the manager in jail and still managed to lose there. So, so at least Ange, for all the stick that I give him credit, he did go there and get a result today. Jose Mourinho went to a team with a manager in prison and lost. Thank you very much. Good night.
Cracks, thank you. And thank you for persisting with us. Like I say, it's been an interesting show to say the least. And, Russell, come on to that point that, again, Tamworth will deeply upset the way the FA Cup has now been obviously controlled to the degree where replays are no longer there, because they would have taken a nice size bit money really to take that replay, but it's not to be. But I'm sure Russ will agree, full credit to Tamworth, they were superb in that game. And, again, part-time players, but they gave absolutely everything, didn't they, in that game?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is, yes, they were great, and they were a credit to the game of football and the pyramid and the National League. I think 10 years ago, Spurs would have won that game easily within 90 minutes. And I think that the fifth tier now of English football is getting better and better and better. And if you're off your game, they find it a lot easier to compete with the so-called big boys. And I think we saw a bit of that today. Let's take nothing away from Tamworth. They're fit young men. They were coached well. And the pitch wasn't great for a professional team like Spurs, but it was a level, uneven, sloped 3G pitch. And, they played well on it. And in a way, like a lot of Spurs fans, that first goal, it was such a terrible goal for such a terrible game until then. But they obviously are going to live to fight another day, and Tottenham are into the fourth round against Aston Villa. I don't hold any fears about going to Villa Park, really. I think we've got a bit of the Indian sign over them, and hopefully it will continue. But Wednesday is obviously, as we were talking about earlier, really important. We'll have brilliant support there at the Emirates. Our record there is not good. Just sing louder and drown out that dreary song before kickoff. It's appalling.
Russ, we love you very, very much. We'll see you for David Moyes' second game on his return to Everton to come. It's an interesting week in store for Tottenham. Of course, we've got a match day week in between. We'll see you for them, Russ. Thank you so much, and thank you for persisting with us
thanks for having me.
In a testing show of Last Word on Spurs. Always a adventure on the ride of what we are. Miles, we know you love the roller coaster. It's all about the cups, isn't it, Miles? Like I say, we've set ourselves up. Spurs, as a mid-Jan, still in the FA Cup, still in the League Cup, Europa League to come. Will that be your main takeaways, Miles? Look, as we said, full credit to Tamworth. Is it just about getting through now and focusing on the next big game, which is Arsenal to come? And like you said there, I mean, because of the Arsenal result, I think people have been a bit more calmer as we've gone on in this show, that there's bigger games ahead now. Win against Tamworth, it's done. Let's move on to Arsenal.
No, I totally agree. Like I've always said, I'll give Ange the cups. And at the present moment, he's fulfilling everything that I've allowed him to have. I'm not in the same camp as everyone else. I don't see today as tactics at all. I just think it was down to the desire and the personnel he put out there. He could have done some tweaks, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, look, Spurs are through. We're 1-0 up against Liverpool. We've got 2 big games in the Europa League coming up, which we've, kind of got to at least get a point or 2 just to make sure, confirm that we're going to go into the next round. And again, we've got Villa, and hopefully Villa have the Champions League to actually focus on, and then maybe that cup becomes a bit more interesting. But yeah, fair play. We're through. Move on. Let's get this season up and running. Let's get 2025, 2 clean sheets as well, by the way, in a row.
Yeah, 2 clean sheets in a row.
I don't care if it's against, I was about to call them Marine then. I don't know why I had Marine on my head, but against Tamworth and Liverpool. But it's got to be done. If Liverpool can't score past us and Tamworth can't, it is what it is. Let's hopefully we can get a third one in a row.
Amen. Miles, thank you so much. Spurs Kings TV, go and check them out. Cracks, have the final word. Go on.
Rick, can I have that picture of Ange back up again, please? That you've just used
Of the cups.
This is no good on audio, but check it out on YouTube. Can I ask, please, have we got any idea of how Ange is holding up that cup in the middle there? Because he's got one in either arm, and then there's one in the middle. So I'll leave you to ponder that thought of how he's holding that cup up.
And I won't tell you where Daniel Levy's situated in that position. Listen, I think that's all you need from us before we do get extra and firmly kicked off on our own platform. Look, we've been the last one on Spurs. 7,000 of you found your way back to us. So for the other 4,000 that started with us, I hope you found us again. Listen, you might be part of the 7,000 that found your way back, but we got one eventually. I want to say a massive thank you to broadcaster extraordinaire Russ Williams. Russ, we'll see you with David Moyes' second game in charge of Everton at home. We'll see Crackers for Tuesday and Wednesday of what's to come. Bless him. I think he's back with Everton as well. We're really using up the hours of Crackers and battery time. Russ and Crackers, we're so sorry. And Miles, I think we're just used to it, Miles, now. We've just used you as overtime, so please accept our apologies. The wonderful Miles are at the Spurs Kings. And to our watching audience, thank you so much for standing by us, for finding us again. No, we're not playing Ange Postecoglou's interview anytime soon again. You'll get that joke for those that were halfway through this show and had to find us again. But look, from the wonderful Richard Cracknell, from the superb Russ Williams, from the brilliant Marlon at the Spurs Kings, Spurs are in the next round of the FA Cup. They're also in still the Carabao Cup semi-final of a second leg to come. They're also battling hard in the Europa League. We're urging harder with regards to this picture, but Spurs are in the cups. Is it cups or bust? We'll wait and see. From the wonderful guys, we have been the last word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well, and as always,
come on, you Spurs.